So how's your team doing? Now, whatever your answer might be, there's always ways to improve. And I've done the work for you. Here are 10 players you need to trade for right away. Let me begin by saying go get A.J. Dillon immediately. Right now in the season, he is averaging, when you take into account week 4, 17.5 opportunities per game, which ranks top 10 amongst running backs. And based on this usage, he ranks 21st in expected fantasy points. However, Dillon currently ranks 32nd in actual points scored this year. And there's one big reason for this. He only has 1 touchdown on the year, but expect this to change given that top 10 usage I just talked about and the offense he's in. Because the Green Bay Packers rank 4th in rushing offense this year, and in terms of schemes, what Matt LaFleur is doing, it's probably a top 2 or top 3 overall offensive scheme when it comes to the running game. It's very creative at getting these guys in space. So go get Dillon before the touchdowns come, and then he's untouchable, and also get this rookie wide receiver. And that's Garrett Wilson, and I have major news to share with you. For the first time this year and in his young career, Garrett Wilson has passed Corey Davis up in not just snaps this past week, but he ran 7 more routes than Corey Davis, 37 to Davis's 30, which means he's now the wide receiver 2 finally on this team in usage. And this led to a team high 7 targets from a new quarterback being in there, which is great to see in Zach Wilson. However, Wilson only scored 6 fantasy points last week, so there's a chance you could actually buy low on him right now. Even though when you take into account his 7 targets from last week, he now has 7 targets in every single game this year, and he ranks top 10 in expected fantasy points based on his usage, and now he's seeing more usage, more snaps. He's right around Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill. That's the role that this guy has in the Jets offense. So trade for him and this stud wide receiver. And that would be Jamar Chase. Buy him right now. Because Chase has only averaged 9.4 fantasy points per game over his last 3 weeks, and based on my mentions in my DMs in my comment section, I know that people are panicking. Chase is being double teamed often, but it's likely not going to sustain, and here's why. His teammate T. Higgins is dominating one-on-one matchups. When you double team Jamar Chase, you're leaving one-on-ones on the other side of the field. T. Higgins this past week goes for over 120 yards and a touchdown in his one-on-one matchup. And this is very similar to what happened to Justin Jefferson weeks 2 and week 3. But thanks to his teammates getting open, Jefferson saw one-on-one coverage week 4 and popped off. So expect more one-on-one coverages for Jamar Chase, who is averaging over 10 targets per game so far this season. So make sure you buy him and this running back before they go off week 5. And that's going to be Alvin Kamara, who has missed 2 games so far this year with a rib injury, but after missing week 2, we saw him in week 3 come back and command 22 total opportunities, 15 carries and 7 targets. It was his clear backfield. And this is encouraging, and here's what it means. It means that Kamara is likely to go right back to seeing this elite usage once he's back from injury, and he has a top 7 opportunity share on the year. He's been a great running back, just battling some injuries right now, and his owners are getting frustrated. And you could take advantage of that because the Saints have no other options, and you saw that in the London game. They don't have great running backs behind them. Mark Ingram, Dwayne Washington, Tony Jones, who was outside the top 100 running backs last year in running back efficiency. Yeah, it's all Kamara. And based on the 2 games of data we have, this is what Kamara has done. Out of these 2 highlighted numbers on the left is his 8.4 fantasy points per game, but based on his usage, he's expected to score 12.9 points per game, about 50% more. Expect that to come. Get him before this starts happening. But then sell this next running back. And that would be Rashad Penny, who just had a monster week 4. We loved him in DFS as a low-owned option, and he played great. He went for over 28 fantasy points, 31 plus if you get bonuses for 100-yard games in your league, and he looked great out there. But there's one big issue and something to call out. He faced the Detroit Lions, who rank bottom 5 in run defense and are the 2nd worst tackling team in the NFL. So he took advantage of a good matchup, meaning that this is probably your perfect time to sell him on the entire year, and here's what you need to know. There's no denying that Rashad Penny has a good role. He was a better mid to late round pick, and this past week he played 67% of the snaps, and he actually ran 16 routes, leading these running backs in Seattle. But we're trying to win a fantasy league, and selling high on a mid-round running back after his likely best week on the entire season is something you should try doing, and you should also try buying this tight end. And that would be the Cardinals tight end Zach Ertz, who currently right now ranks 4th amongst all tight ends in tight end usage. Only Travis Kelce, Andrews, and Tyler Higbee, who is playing fantastic this year, are ranked ahead of him. But let's break down this usage even more because it gets even better. Right now, Zach Ertz leads all tight ends in slot snaps, and when you're in the slot, you have an advantage against a linebacker, and you could use more of the field basically in your route progressions. And this is paying off in a major way because he had 8 red zone targets heading into week 4, and after week 4, he now has the most red zone targets at 10 amongst any tight end. And in terms of the entire NFL, not just tight ends, only Devontae Adams has more red zone looks. He is a staple in this offense in the red zone, being used in the slot. It is a cheat code for a tight end. Go get him. And now this next guy is the #1 trade target, and it's by far and away the Bengals running back Joe Mixon, who is a must-have right now. He ranks 1st out of every single player in the NFL, right? Cooper Kupp's in there, Devontae Adams ahead of Saquon, who's killing it at the running back position. He is 1st in expected fantasy points, 24 per game. However, he's currently nowhere near that, which means you could buy really low on a guy who's about to break out. And one of the big reasons why he isn't higher up in fantasy points per game right now is he only has 1 touchdown on the season right here, and it came this past week. Based on the usage he's seeing, he's going to start seeing a lot more touchdowns because Mixon is averaging a league-high 26.5 opportunities per game. That's his touches on the ground and his targets in the receiving game. And just this past week, he continued his elite role, playing 52 of 64 snaps, and he ended up going out there and securing 28 more opportunities out of the potential 31 in this backfield. This role is elite. Go get him. And then trade away his division rival. And that would be J.K. Dobbins from the Ravens, who honestly looked really good in his second game back from this knee injury that he's been rehabbing for a year. He ended up securing all 17 of his opportunities. 4 receptions was nice to see, and he puts up 22.3 fantasy points because he finds the end zone 2 times, making it the perfect time to sell. Let me explain. You see, the Ravens still use 3 running backs this week, with Mike Davis being active and actually playing a couple of snaps, leaving Dobbins to only play 35 of 70 snaps. 50% of the snaps isn't elite, and it's not even that great. And the backup, Justice Hill, actually played on 86% of the 3rd and 5 or longer snaps, the passing down snaps, over Dobbins. But that's not all, because Gus Edwards is going to be returning soon, and he is one of the better and more efficient running backs in the NFL when he is active, so he'll be involved. And the quarterback, Lamar Jackson, is averaging over 9 after now week 4 added into this, now 9 carries per game, so he's going to take away usage on the ground. So sell Dobbins off of this 2-touchdown game and then go get this tight end. And that would be the Raiders tight end, who was going in like the 4th round of a lot of fantasy drafts, and you can get him dirt cheap right now. Because over his last 2 games, he has not produced. He's had under 4 fantasy points in back-to-back games. This is awful for a 4th round pick. But it's a great time to buy low because the underlying usage is still really good. Because Darren Waller this past week, this number 35 is the amount of routes he ran this week on a potential 39 dropbacks. So he ran a route on 90% of Carr's dropbacks, which ranks 2nd amongst all tight ends last week. So here's what this all boils down to. Darren Waller's usage is still elite. And after week 4, he now ranks top 5 in both deep targets and red zone targets at the tight end position, which translation means he has the fantasy cheat codes at the tight end position. So go get him and this next running back. And that's the Arizona Cardinals running back James Conner, who currently ranks 16th in running back usage in the games he's played. However, he ranks 32nd in fantasy points, but if he's going to see this usage, expect this gap to close. Because Conner is still dealing with an injury, but he's still getting this much usage. I mean, this past week, he plays 50 of 76 snaps. That's 65% of the snaps, and he earns a very solid 18 opportunities, 15 carries, and 3 targets. He also saw all the goal line work and the majority of the passing down work. But here's the issue. Conner has just 1 touchdown on the season, so this is skewing his overall end results, and he's been a little bit limited in these games. Expect over 70% of the snaps moving forward. Now check this out. These 2 numbers on the left is what he's averaging, 10.8 points per game, and 14.1 on the right is what he's expected to average. 31% more points is what he's expected to average based on this usage moving forward. Translation, you need to buy low on him right now, and the same can be said for this next back. And that's the Bills running back Devin Singletary, who's coming off of the best usage of the season. He ended up seeing 55 of 63 snaps. By no means was this any type of backfield by committee, playing 87% of the snaps, and when you look at his opportunities, 16 of the potential 20, 80% of the opportunities. This is top 5 usage on the week. And he's seeing the high value touches at the running back position, seeing red zone and goal line snaps, and he ranks 2nd amongst all running backs in targets the last 2 weeks. The upside is there. But he didn't produce a lot of points this past week, so you might be able to buy him low. And then consider selling on this wide receiver. And that's Marquise Brown, who, look, he's been absolutely fantastic. Now, according to PFF, he ranks 2nd with 36 targets over the last 3 weeks, but if you look at other areas, he has 39 targets, which would be 1st over the last 3 weeks. And he's 8th in overall fantasy points, so he's been fantastic. But here's why you should consider selling him. This production is unlikely to continue for the rest of the season of averaging 13 targets a week, especially when DeAndre Hopkins come back and Rondale Moore came back last week. So try trading him for potentially a Jamar Chase or even a Devontae Adams type player. That's the name of the game here. We want to trade good players for great players. That's value. And speaking of value, if you want to get the weekly rankings, projections, waiver wire tiers, and a whole lot more, well, just click the link in the description and follow the 2 simple steps to acquire the supreme cheat sheet that thousands of other people are using. And here's the big thing. It is a one-time payment of $10, but if you don't win your fantasy league, I'll refund you $10. I'm only running this offer until next week, so be sure to click the link in the description to learn more. And then be sure to get Marquise Brown's teammate Kyler Murray, who's currently 8th amongst quarterbacks in fantasy points. But based on his usage and the game environments he's in, he's actually expected to rank 3rd, top 3 in fantasy points per game amongst quarterbacks. And Murray is putting up strong numbers despite missing key players. Hopkins has been suspended, he didn't have Rondale Moore for 3 weeks, and James Conner's been limited for 2 weeks. So buy Murray before he goes nuclear, but then sell this RB. And this one might be polarizing, but let's break it down. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been a fantastic player this year. Based on his usage, he currently ranks 20th in fantasy points per game. A top 20 running back is very good, and that's something to be proud of as a fantasy owner. But this is where things start to get really interesting. Even though he ranks 20th in usage and what he's expected to score, he is 4th in actual fantasy points, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that he has 5 touchdowns on the year. Translation, he's overproducing given his little usage so far. But one more thing. It is important to call out that Clyde Edwards-Helaire snaps actually increased this week. They went up to 56%, but the issue issue is Isaiah Pacheco, the rookie, looked really good and his snaps increased. Pacheco ended up playing 21% of the snaps and he was given 11 touches in a meaningful game, right? And he was looking really good. If you watch the game, he looked dynamic, explosive, and he was by far the most efficient, ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, efficient running back on this team, averaging nearly 6 yards per touch. So here's your takeaway from all this. Like I said, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been fantastic, but there is a key window right now that might not be there next week to sell this player who will not sustain this production for a guy actually getting great usage with upside. Maybe a Joe Mixon, maybe an Alvin Kamara. I would recommend doing so because it might be your last chance. Now, there are other ways to improve your team, like the waiver wire. And if you want to see 10 wide receivers that you should be adding off of your waivers right now, if they're still out there, then check out this lovely, lovely video right here. And if you're one of the 64% of people not subscribed to this YouTube channel, I appreciate if you hit the subscribe button.